Tell me what's your name.
Oh, my name is Kelvin Mendier, and I am where I'm from.
Yeah, where are you from? Okay, cool. I gotta ask a question.
Um,
Where are you from?
I'm from Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Um,
Where are you born? You born there?
I was born in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, River State, Port Harcourt. River State is the name of the state. Port Harcourt is the name of the city, which is the capital city of Nigeria. And um,
You grew up there.
I grew up there up till I was 18, and then I moved here in 2015 to Canada, Toronto, and I've been here ever since. Um, yeah, so my parents were themselves, even though they were living in Nigeria, they were themselves immigrants in where they were living. So Port Harcourt is like a major city, but our tribe, we're not from Port Harcourt. We're not from River State. We're from a different place. My dad and my mom moved from um, Akwa Ibom State, which is a different state, to River State, and had their kids and raised their kids there. They live there now, still. And growing up, I grew up in a pretty privileged family in the sense of I never had to worry about food or water. I never had to like think about my own safety. At least as a kid, I was completely sheltered from most of what was happening in Port Harcourt. Um, like not really most from from most of what was happening. I don't like to think that because I like to think I'm like, you know, gangster, but I'm not. I'm um, yeah. It's like I grew up in a pretty good, had a pretty good upbringing. My dad worked a lot. My dad worked for an oil company, Shell, probably know Shell. Um, and my mom is a creative. She like she sews, she makes clothes, she makes um she was kind of like my art teacher growing up. It's really funny now I think about it because she would always like do little critiques on the drawings that I would do, and I grew up seeing her do sketches for like clothes. And so I grew up around art and drawing a lot, and I always had to think about color and composition and um, yeah. So I grew up being a very artsy kid. I grew up well, not very artsy, but like I had a strong interest in drawing growing up, and um, also I did a lot of like I was a dancer as a kid, which is hilarious to say now because I can't dance for shit anymore. Um, I used to do a lot of performance art. I used to like be in drama class, and those things aren't really like considered important skills where I'm from because everybody's like I'm from Nigeria, so like that the mentality is you go to school and you learn engineering or you learn medicine and you become a doctor, an engineer, or whatever. um, to represent my childhood, one item. That's deep. Well, one item. Hmm. Uh, I would say like the first thing that comes to my mind is a pencil because that's the one thing I feel like connects my entire family because we're all artists, which is weird. Even though none of us actually calls ourselves that, we're all kind of like creative in our own way. Um, I grew up seeing my mom do drawings for like sketches, Um, my cousins were all like into engineering, so they had super crazy. I remember seeing like my cousin's like his construction drawings from like engineering school. My cousin did chemical engineering, so he learned a lot about like it's like oil and pipelines and like all this chemistry and physics drawings. So I grew up seeing all those things, and I was actually, because my dad was also a science kid. Um, my dad also named me after physics, after like, so Kelvin is like the degree of hotness or cold. It's like the degree of measurement of heat. It's like the physics, the degree Kelvin. You heard of that? Yeah, it's basically a physics term. Slit. What do I think? Um, I think I had a good childhood. Um, in terms of
story,
um,
that can represent.
oh boy, a specific story. There's
Or like these little specific things happen in your childhood.
that I don't think if I there's a lot of things that I could share, but I don't think any of those things define what my childhood was like because
Could be a part of it.
it's definitely a part of it. Um, so one time, uh, one time while I don't remember if I was going to school or coming back from school. I think I was coming back because my school is, yeah, I was definitely coming back from school. And my uncle had an accident. We had an accident in the car. It wasn't a major accident. Um, it was more, he just hit a motorcycle that was just there, that was like sitting there. Nobody was on the motorcycle. He just hit it. I don't know why. He just drove the car into the motorcycle. But I think the day after that, or like a short time after that, he was driving me again, and we were getting back from school, and at the same spot that this motorcycle crash had happened, there was this accident that happened there again that didn't involve us, where this little kid got hit by a car, and I saw, I kind of we passed by it while this whole ordeal was happening. So I saw this little kid who got hit by a car, like foaming in the mouth, and like, um, just yeah. I don't know if the kid died or something. I don't know, but I saw that shit. I saw that shit, and it was kind of, huh? It feels weird. No, it was weird for sure. It was definitely weird. Oh my god, that was such a weird feeling.
How old were you?
I don't remember. I think probably younger than 10, around like 7, 6. I don't know, but yeah, and I was definitely shook by that. But it's like yeah, that's something that happened. Just like an accident happened, and a kid got hit by a car, and I saw that shit. Yeah, I was fucked up. But definitely doesn't define my childhood, but that's something that happened that just came to mind right now. I would say the color blue,
Why?
because literally everything in our house is blue and white. And yeah, it's I forgot what the color blue means to us, but our church, the church I grew up going to, is painted blue and white through and through. Like, you wear, and on first Sundays we would always wear white on first Sundays of the month, because that's Communion Sunday, and that's, it's church. It's like an event, but it was, yeah, but blue, yeah, blue and white. Those are the the big colors in my childhood. Every time I think back, and also yeah, the city I grew up in, the taxis were all blue and white as well, which is kind of trippy. Our church was blue and white, and there was a spiritual reason why the church was blue and white. But also in our city, the taxis in our city were blue and white, and that was blue and white was the official color of our city. That's really interesting. I never thought about that too. Wow. But yeah, blue. In a lot of ways, um, our childhood, your inner child is something that you create. Like the way you grew up definitely influences how you relate to people as an adult, and um, I feel like the way I grew up has influenced the way, just the fact that I was such an introverted kid. I was such a like loner kid. I just kind of, I'm now for the first time as an adult learning to be like more social, to like interact with people, to connect with people, to like allow myself to just, be around um, other energies, like open myself up to learning new things. And well, I've always wanted to learn new things, but I'm getting more into the social aspect of life. Um, but that's the reason I'm learning that now, and I'm learning how to be a friend now, is because when I growing up, I didn't really have that. I was always just like secluding and by myself because I just enjoyed being by myself, and also I didn't want to. Yeah, I just liked sitting at home and drawing. So in that way, it does definitely affect me. And I was always a very like just the same way I am now. I was always very like multifaceted as a kid. I was always like, I would sew and I would knit. Like, I grew up around I have only sisters. So I have three sisters and no brothers, just me, my three younger sisters. So I grew up having to teach my sisters how to sew and how to knit and how to do all this other stuff. And it was just like, I had to, all those things are very relevant now because now I have all these skills. Like I draw and I sew, I can stitch my own clothes. Um, yeah. So I learned, I feel like my childhood has affected me in a lot of positive and negative ways. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can't believe I spent, I remember, this is an event I actually really remember growing up. So, uh, my dad had a Mercedes Benz.
Mhm.
I can't believe I remember this now. But like, he had a Mercedes Benz, and it had this thing that used to sign. I don't know if you've ever seen a car like that before, but like, I remember. So I was trying to draw my dad's car one day as a kid, and I was trying to draw like the facade of the front of his car, and I was so frustrated because I couldn't get it right. And I remember my uncle tried to help me out. He tried to help me out to draw the thing, and like I basically hated what he drew because I was just like, yo, like I wasn't satisfied with what he made, even though he was an adult and he knew what he was doing. I felt like my drawing, like I felt like he didn't present the car the way that I saw it and the way I needed it to look like. And I was so angry because because I couldn't draw the car. But yeah, and it was a blue car, might I mention. It's colored blue, sky blue. I don't have sky blue, that word. Sky blue gold. Um, yes. So the reason, the first thing that came to my mind to draw was this car, which is my representation from memory of what I think, or what the car of this, my dad's car. My dad had a blue Mercedes Benz growing up, and I remember that was his car. My mom, he never let my mom drive the car because he bought my mom a red car, which is interesting because red is directly opposite of blue on the color wheel. Um, yeah, so this was the car, and I remember a specific incident where I was trying to draw this car, and I asked my uncle to help me draw this car, and he did his best, but like I didn't think as a kid, my 5-year-old mind just was not satisfied at all with his drawing. I was just like, yo, your drawing is trash. I'm about to like sit here and learn how to draw this car. And I actually did. I spent the next few years just like making so many different iterations of the car. For some reason, I just felt like drawing a car was like like a test of my skill as a drawer, as an artist. I didn't really think of myself as an artist, but like as somebody who draws. I just wanted to test my skill, and I was so interested in getting it right and making sure it looked perfectly picture perfect that I completely, yeah. Now I remember how to draw the car from memory, just because I've been like, just I spent so much time learning to draw it. Now I know how to draw it, and I can't forget it, which is really cool. It's just something that's always going to be in my memory, I guess. That's what's really interesting about drawing, is like you commit things to memory by drawing sometimes, and it's drawing very simple things, and they just kind of stay with you, and you can like vomit that image. You can like pull out that image whenever you need it. You just call upon it, and it just happens. It's beautiful. But yeah, that's my story behind this drawing.
Feed me the circle.
Okay, allow it.
No, don't throw it. Don't throw it. Don't throw it.
You're the one asking me to feed you the circle.
So walk over here and give me this circle. No, don't throw it. I won't catch it.
Okay.
Yeah, bad monkey. Human, good. Okay, walk. Feed me the circle. No, don't. Exactly. My name is Paula. Seattle. Like, okay, so my dad was a sushi chef. Um, my dad always worked 2 to 3 jobs, so he was really, really busy. And my mom, she did like translation work in Spanish. And sometimes she'd work from home or she'd go to the office. My mom also, during periods of my life, was an accountant, and so she'd be at the office. As a kid, like when I was really little, I spent a lot of time with my dad. Before he was a sushi chef, my dad was a fish deliverer. So we would just go, I lived in a neighborhood in Seattle, really, really close to Chinatown. You just walk down the bridge. So I lived, if you look on a map of Seattle, it's kind of like how Toronto is like, the city of Toronto's right here, and then there's the GTA. I lived, so in Seattle, it's kind of like the city, and then there's the suburbs, but the city's this like big little loop thing, and so, and we're all surrounded by water, and so Chinatown, and it's super hilly. Like there's hills everywhere. It's not flat like Toronto, and so there's this like there's this hill, and you just walk down the bridge, and you get to Chinatown, and so above it is North Beacon Hill, and it's where I lived and where I grew up. My dad and I would go to Chinatown, and he would just deliver to all the restaurants like fish. And I would spend my time in the back of his car. Sometimes my dad, like I remember once, there was this one time my dad had a tank of crabs to deliver. And I was like, man, let's keep a crab. Let's have crab pets. And he was like, we can't. And I was really sad because I was confused as to why there were so many. You know, and like, I wanted to be friends with them. I wanted to play with them and take them out, but I was scared because, you know, they were like scary. And their coloring was really scary too. It was like brownish. So yeah, I just went on fish delivery runs with my dad. And then when I was old enough, I would go to school, and then my dad would pick me up. And then closer to like high school, middle school, my sister and I would just hang out. My sister is 7 years younger than me, and I'm the oldest, and we don't have any more siblings. I think my childhood was probably like maybe 3 colors. When I was little, I was like probably like a really light yellow. Why? I don't know, it was just really fun. Like, when you meet kids, everything is so intentional and everything's so beautiful. Like, they just want to play, and they're like, you can play too, and they like grab you. And I was like that. But then when I was older, like still a child, but definitely not a kid anymore. You know, like I'm not 5. I'm like 12. Maybe dark blue, because in Seattle it rains every day of the year. And so I spent a lot of my time thinking in my room. And I'd look out the window. It was raining. Or I'd walk around and go places and it was raining and it was blue. Yeah. Maybe blue and yellow. Good enough. I think that my childhood in relation to being blue would probably be like that dark blue that you get in the interim between fall and winter when you wake up, like not at the crack of dawn, but like 7 to maybe 8 a.m. when it's cold, when it's like a windy, cloudy day, like dark blue, but not night. That was my childhood. Because like I said, it rains every day in Seattle. But I think that was my childhood because that color can be so beautiful, but so beautiful can like be too much, because that it takes a lot of patience to look at that color and not feel like anxious, it's kind of sad. And so that's kind of how I feel about my dad, where it's like the man is a mystery. And there's a lot of questions that I have about his childhood and his mannerisms and his behavior that I think about sometimes in my work or just in my life. And sometimes, and my dad would drive me to school when I was young. And that was the color that I'd see outside the window, and so, yeah. Mm-hmm. A computer. Because I would have never fucking got to where I am today without Googling things. I was just a curious kid. I read really early. And actually, no, I didn't read. I pretended to read. But as soon as I could read, I shared info, and that got me into conversations, and then all of a sudden there was a computer somewhere, and I found things. I found so many things on the internet as a kid that my friends were just not, my friends were playing outside, man. And I grew up on the West Coast. It's beautiful. You could go take a hike, or you could get lost in the woods, or you could go and swim in a river, or you could literally go to the ocean, the Pacific Ocean. And I was Googling. Yeah, I was Googling. No, I'm just saying, I grew up in a beautiful place, and I could have gone outside, but instead I chose to stay home and Google. There's these Japanese rice cracker snacks. They have seaweed wrapped around them, and they're just like a puffed rice cracker, and they're tan. And sometimes I'd go with my dad to do the groceries, and he'd be like, okay, pick snacks for school. I'd always pick those. And I'd pick like different snacks that were also like Japanese, or sometimes I'd like, no, actually, come to think of it, most of the snacks that I ate when I was a kid were Japanese. They're like these like sweet and salty kind of cookies. I don't know what the hell they're called. But they're also puffed rice. And they have two little pieces of seaweed. I guess just food in my childhood was really cool because, like, you know, being mixed, like, my mom every weekend was always like, okay, let's go to this Mexican party. And I was not interested at all. But every time I go, there's like this one Mexican cake, and it's called Tres Leches. And it's vanilla cake with milk. And it's wet cake with like just plain whipped cream and strawberries. I loved it. Like, I ate so much cake once I was dating someone, and my mom was like, if you want to integrate them more, bring them to eat. Bring them to the party. And I was like, okay. And so I brought this guy to like a party, and they were giving cake, and I was like, okay, you go over there, get 2 plates, say one's for me, and I'll go to the next table and go get 2 plates and say that the other 2 are for you and me. And I was just so excited to eat this cake. And my mom killed it. She was like, have you ever seen someone who eats cake faster than they can sit down to eat it? And I was like, thanks. That really, helped me. It didn't last long, whatever. But the point is like there's like, I just feel like in my home, I was like, one of the really good things about my home was that I was so fortunate to grow up mixed and exposed to like different foods. And you know, when I tell people that I'm mixed, I get so many different responses and questions, but like people often ask about the food, and you know, that is a really good thing. I ate a lot, and I'm really, really grateful for that. And also, when you're mixed and you grow up mixed and you like bring like, you know, like chicken feet to school, or like sushi, leftover sushi, you know, or like spam musubi. It makes you tough because other kids are like, what the fuck are you eating? You know, and they look at you weird. But it's really funny because when you're older, like all the tourists go to these ethnic restaurants and they're like, you know, I'm eating tacos, or like I'm eating, you know, I'm eating pupusas. And you're just kind of like, weren't you the people who were making fun of me when I was a kid? You know, and it's really funny how like life turns around like that. But I think my childhood was good for my stomach. Oh my God. I guess every question that I had about who my parents were, why things worked or didn't work, who I want my sister to like, you know, talk to on the phone when she talks to me, like what version of me, just, I think everybody, in a way, psychologically tries to compensate for faults in their childhood, or just sort of like, they try and like, you know, do the things that they say they wanted to do, you know. So in my childhood, like for example, growing up in a mixed home where my dad was like Asian and white and my mom was Spanish, there were definitely language barriers, and you had to be like creative to sort of get everybody together and like everybody to pay attention to one another, besides eating dinner together. And so like me and my sister would do really stupid things. We would put on shows. Like we would just like, we would take all of our old Halloween costumes and make up some story and like just do something. Or like at Christmas, there was once we saw this, my dad's half brother was playing Jackass. And I don't know why my cousins were like, hey, you're the tannest one in the room. Let's turn you into the bad guy. And I was like, wow. I mean, like years later, it took me a second to be like, was that racism? You know, and like we did bad as kids. Like we did like bad things. Like we, you know, not bad in the sense that we weren't like, we didn't steal and we didn't like sneak drugs behind our parents' backs and we didn't drink. But like we would reenact some of the shit we'd see on Jackass, and that was so bad, you know. Like other friends of mine were like fucking getting their nails done with their mom, and here I am getting a box taped to like my sweater on Christmas Eve, you know what I mean? And so yeah, I think that like my childhood provided for, like my childhood asked me to be creative, you know? Because with so many differences in the room, you had to like sort of learn how to make things work. And I think that's why I'm an artist. I think I'm an artist because I try and like compensate for the faults by making things beautiful or funny or feel. I try and evoke feeling. Yeah. Once I married my dog in my living room, I could draw the marriage ceremony of me and my dog. That's pretty good. It was lit. Like I think I was maybe 5. My sister wasn't even born yet. And so my mom's mom, when I was born, my mom had no time. She had to go right back to work. And my grandma came to raise me. And so I only spoke Spanish for like the first 5 years of my life. And one day, I don't know why. Okay. So anyways, so my grandma then passes away, unfortunately. And her sister, so my great aunt, fills in for her. And by this time, you know, we live in Seattle, not Vancouver anymore. And I guess we didn't go outside, not because Seattle's not safe. Seattle's one of the safest cities in the United States. I think we didn't go outside maybe because we didn't speak English. I don't know. And so we would try and do things at home, and like I don't know why, but I was like, I'm gonna marry my dog. Let's do this. So I took all of my stuffed animals. My sister wasn't even born, so it was just really me and my great aunt. And I think now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, how could someone be okay with this? You know, like, why not encourage a kid to be like, hey, let's play restaurant or something neutral? You know, like, why go into marriage? But So we put some shit on my dog, like whatever I at that time associated with marriage, and I probably tied a blanket around me as a cape. I don't know. Might have put a crown on. Like, I don't really remember what the styling was, but I just remember walking we had a long hallway in one of the homes that we lived in, and I walked down the hall with the dog, and like I made my aunt hum the like dun 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 dun, you know. And I married my dog in front of the TV. Like, that's what I did. So I could draw that for you. That's not bad.